Donor Participation Project office hours. And it's a really special guest that I have here with us today. We're going to have a chat with Francesco Ambrogetti. He didn't put his last name on the screen to test me to, see how my Italian was doing today. But welcome, Francesco. How are you?
Good, thanks. Very great thanks for having me. Happy to be here after a long weekend and talking about stuff that sounds very obscure for many, but actually, I really believe, this is the real future of our sector in many ways. So I'm very
I
happy to be here.
I totally agree with you. And Francesco, this conversation we're going to have is doubly important for me because I think I shared with you before. My father wrote a book on financial engineering in Spain, and this is kind of like, oh, finally, you're going to stop being a fundraiser, stop being a beggar. You can do something serious with your life. So I'm hoping that you will illuminate the path for us, Francesco. If anybody else is on here and wants to ask Francesco questions, just pop them in the chat and we'll answer them as we go. But please maybe share how you got this perspective. This kind of, you have a very solid fundraising perspective, the emotional piece, the storytelling. You've written books about it, but you also have a very strong rooted financial perspective. How did that happen?
Well, it's a long story, like all the stories, and but it's just that I started the World Bank many years ago, and well, the World Bank still is and was a bank, so it was lending money and getting money to poor countries, and with all the bad consequences we know, but analyzing the social and environmental risk at that time in their projects.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this idea that we do this all big infrastructure, invest all the money, and all of a sudden some indigenous people coming and delay the thing, or people refuse to move from one place to another. Why is that happen? So there was a realization that actually humans and environment are affecting their things. And so from there,
Mm-hmm.
I then developed more a fundraising career, but always with an eye on the idea that the market is there. And I always use this statistic, right? Philanthropy overall is I think it was 1 trillion money, while no, not even a few 10 or 20 billion. While the market is trillions of money, so this big gap, money out there all goes dump a lot, I would say, to Coca-Cola and Amazon and Netflix, which are important thing in our life, but as like saying they are more important than the missions we do. So I always took an eye on how we can just leverage and attract more this type of money. So during my career, I did all sort of things. I did the CCAF with the Credit Suisse while I was working for UNAIDS and AIDS
Okay,
space.
for the dummies here, acronyms.
Uh,
What do those things mean?
it was an investment of
Okay.
in equity, and that's in companies that are around the world. We're connected to medical equipment, vaccine, so you
Oh,
invest
cool.
in something that advance in the mission, and part of the revenues also go to the mission as a donation, right? So then I
Huh.
did that the same thing in Italy when I was at Unicef in Italy. While I was in New York and a different organization, I did 3 products in Wall Street. There are ETF,
Oh.
exchange traded funds that I think all of us are investing, I hope, because they're the safest thing in the world. But you go blind in a sense. You want to protect your capital, you want to make some money, it's your pension or whatever, but you never know where you invested in, right? And so there
Mm-hmm.
is a huge desire of people say, I want to protect my capital, I want to make some money, but I don't want to just harm animals. I don't want to pollute the environment. I don't want to
Uh-huh.
exploit children. How
I
can
want
I
my
be
investments to reflect my values. No.
yeah, how can I be sure? And most of the problem is that the financial gurus that they promise you great returns, they never, first of all, they never achieve return, but also they know nothing about our sector. So what I did with the NWCP on racial equality, and with YWCA on gender equality, and with the UN on sustainable development goals, create these 3 products. There are basically investing companies that are, for instance, on gender equality, only have a certain number of women in top position management, or they have a
Mm-hmm.
family leave that you, if you are pregnant, you can take up to 8 months leave pay, or in the racial equality, only a certain type of diversity in the board. So the organization, they were contributed to establish the criteria. They receive the management fee, so they have a source stream. But more important, they influence, right? Because
Exactly.
I remember having the CEO of Pepsi, just to not mention
Uh-huh.
name, and the CEO of Nestle. They were excluded from our index. They say, how the
Oh.
hell we are? Oh yeah, so why we are not? We're so good. We do all these things, all the reports. Just say, well, look, the criteria are public. You are not. No feeling, so you have to do a better job. So for instance, in our case, they don't source and they don't invest in the least developing countries, the poorest countries.
Hmm.
So, or they have milk substitutes that for us are bad things. So this is the thing where I'm coming from, and just say there's still much to do. I think is the market and the investment thinks that charity is it's a charity case, so they do philanthropy. So
Or a
when I'm a
nutcase.
yeah, it's in a sense when I have my spare change, I donate. But the real
Uh-huh.
money, when my real money, I invest in real estates, in crypto, in stocks and shares that give me money.
Uh-huh.
They're like two worlds apart. There is this in the psychology. It's like your brain when you think donate, it just look literally to the spare change in the pocket. But when you think investment, you look to your portfolio, just look to
Hmm.
your where are my real money. And so this has to change if we really want to make a difference.
So
But
it's
to do change, yeah, we need to just create opportunities and product.
this is amazing. So it's more like moving away from that kind of alms type giving, where you kind of throw a few pennies, versus this more partnership driven model. And you've been developing for a while financial products concepts that kind of change that dynamic, right? So it's an investment, it's a serious thing. Tell us about the recent sustainable bond that you were working on that won an award, and that's how I learned about you. We've been connected for a while, but I was super interested. Tell us about this.
Yeah, that's the latest and maybe the most important. There is for those of you that watch and learn about Dan Pallotta, famous TED talk and the book. Um, he talk about the overhead, and I'm sure you talk in the space and many things about the overhead, and now the overhead is a wrong measure, of course, blah blah blah. But he talk about exactly. They say one of the big obstacle to the growth of the sector is that the capital market. We cannot have a success capital market. We cannot reward people that will invest in us. Simply, we can't. Right? We just we take your money and we thank you. Oh, but we cannot just take your money to scale, to take risk, and if we succeed, we reward you. That's the
Hmm.
reason why we never grow. The sector is stagnating. There is this statistic in like there are like I think 400 nonprofit that reached the $50 million in US, while the number of startup that reach 50 million are like thousands.
Hmm.
That's a thing. So
Uh-huh.
the point is that very simple. How are we gonna get the money for fundraising?
Hmm.
You go to the board. I assume, and I'm curious to know from the people how they do. Normally, I'm sure that's what you do, right? You present your annual budget, right, for fundraising.
Hmm.
Just say this is the target. To achieve this target, this is the money I need to invest, right? Normally, that's the model, right? And the board just
Hmm.
say, I don't think so.
No,
This
they say scratch that. What how much did we spend last year? Right? It's
exactly,
typically the
exactly.
question.
That's what you spent last year, or the best you can do last year plus 5 or 10%. And this is the logic. And so you constantly undermine yourself because you can never grow, you can never scale, you can never take risk, and you can never invest in long term. Just think one legacy, right? Legacy is a
Hmm.
long term process, it's a long term investment, but it's a big reward, right? Because
Hmm.
we know that the legacies are millions of dollars, but takes 5-10 years. You're never going to invest in that because the board doesn't give it to you. You find a fantastic channel, a fantastic campaign that really works, but it can do 10 times better. You don't have the money. And so that's how
Hmm.
we work. It's like imagine exactly the Amazon, the Netflix, the Budweiser of this world. They just say, well, to grow, we need to just see how much sales we have this year, paying all the costs and all the supplier, and what is left divided by things, you can use it to grow.
Yeah.
There's no company that grow like that. We don't buy houses like that. The mortgage itself, they will not exist, right? Luis,
Okay.
we say, do you have $1 million? No, I don't have $1 million, but I have a job, I have things, right? Okay,
Francesco,
so
I can tell you're in the New York housing market
right.
because of your $1 million parameter. But so I mean, people have a conflicted relationship with debt and financing
Right.
in nonprofit. Is that kind of what you found?
Yeah, no, exactly. So we underinvest, we never get the money
Hmm.
because we don't take on debt because it's a bad thing. Oh my God, I need to get back the money. And this, so imagine if the donor knows that we have a debt, right? And all these things. Um, so so when UNICEF come to UNICEF is a big organization, but at the
Hmm.
same thing. So every time we scramble because we know that our model needs money to have to raise money. You need money. We go to the
Hmm.
board, and the board constantly say there's no money. We need more priority. Blah blah blah. Okay, so we left with a gap last year of about $50 million that
What is this
uh,
gap? The gap between what and what?
with the money that need to be invested to acquire and retain new donors, individual
Okay.
donors.
So
In
you said there's
market,
an opportunity here. If we spend $50 million, we can achieve X. We see it pretty clearly. We have a good case,
yeah,
and still that wasn't funded. Okay.
exactly. So, especially in emerging market, this is the interesting part. So, where is the growth? In Thailand, in India, in Brazil, in Mexico. These are markets that have capacity. The costs are cheaper to acquire new individual donors, particularly regular donors, right? That they're
Hmm.
not that they return 4, 5, 6 to 1, right?
Yeah.
Proven. But we don't have this $50 million. The board doesn't give it to you. So
Hmm.
what we do, and that we honestly we tried also to go to foundations, high net worth
Okay.
individuals, our donors, just say, can you please support that? It's an important thing. Nobody wanted to support fundraising
That's
as a
interesting.
donation.
Hmm.
So we say, what if this is a sustainable model? Fundraising is a return on investment. Why don't we ask the market to invest in it?
Hmm.
So we work with the World Bank and Citibank to issue a sustainable development bond on which the proceeds, so the money generated, go to UNICEF. UNICEF invests in acquiring and retain individual donors in those markets and will pay back in 5 years. So we get the money up
Hmm.
front, we can invest, we're going to grow. And there are a couple of interesting things. First of all, is a so-called bullet bond. That means we're going to pay at the end of 5 years.
Okay.
So we have 5 years to pay. Number two is a no-recourse bond. That means there's no other guarantee for the investor than the money we're going to raise. So basically, the investors say, I take the risk because if you don't raise the money, I can lose all the money, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay.
the third part is the data, because of course we have all the data to prove that in the last 10 years, across the different market, different currency, we grow 10%. So it's very unlikely that we're
Hmm.
not going to make, so we make 5 times more than 50 million. In fact, in 1 year we make 120 million already. So
Uh-huh.
but it's the
Got it.
mechanic is that the investors, which is interesting, it's a global market, it's a bunch of Japanese insurer, high net worth individuals in US, some
Wow.
foundation. They basically say that's an interesting thing. I believe you that you can, based on the data you presented, you grow. I take
Hmm.
the risk to potentially lose all the money because if you don't raise, I'll lose it. I don't have any other guarantee than that.
Hmm.
But I will contribute to UNICEF to raise 5 times. I mean, UNICEF have 5 times impact on children. So good for me. My impact will look very good when I
Uh-huh.
report back.
Okay.
And that's it. So we basically
And
we prove that if fundraising is an investable opportunity, it
yeah.
bring new cash to the organization that don't come from the budget. It give 5 years time, which is if you don't raise that money in 5 years, you have some serious problem in your fundraising program.
Yeah, exactly. The problem is not the money. And Francesco, I think well, first, I'm so excited about this. And everybody who's on the call with us today, if you have questions, Mr. Ambrogetti is very approachable. So please reach out to him
Yes.
right here on LinkedIn. But you hit on something really important, and that many of these investors, and increasingly so, have these type of environmental, social sustainability goals that they need to report back to on the people that gave them the money. And that's, I mean, BlackRock has written letters about it. This is a really big thing. And the products that are out there are kind of lame. I mean, if I can say it.
They're relabeling, the blue washing, green washing, pink washing. So these people, they just put to say, yeah, this is sustainable, this is green, this is gender, but it's not. So, but it's true that there are mandate to show that they invest in this area. Now, actually, the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, is going to come with a strong guidelines in which will force company to report in a more transparent way. So there is a lot of pressure, but also a lot of goodwill. So there are serious family office, individual, foundation that just say, give me the product where I can invest in gender equality, racial equality, which is not a new label, but I know that behind there is an organization I can trust. I want to invest in handling homeless. Give me an homeless organization that is tell me that this is a good product, or tell me how can I invest in growing the new charity water that will come up, and that needs capital to grow. I think there is a lot of it just there is no enough product because our approach is say this is bad, this is evil, this is rich bastards.
Money is bad.
I do my charity things. I do very well. I just grow every year by 2%. I get my same budget. I can still, try to make some optimization, and all the rest.
So this is really interesting. You mentioned foundations because foundations have their investment capital, and typically they have, just a big chunk of money. And then they give out whatever the percentage is by law, 2-5%, whatever that is. So this concept that you are developing and you piloted could effectively tap into their big endowment. They could invest part of their endowment in things like these and still help the sector.
Absolutely. The fact is exactly that, Luis, when you go to the foundation, you try to get grants, right? And that's great. That's what the foundation are for. But you never go and say, this is our grant and this is our investments. What part of your investment, instead of going bonds and stocks and share and crypto, just a little bit. Why don't you invest in us, in this product that also will benefit us? We simply don't have enough, and we don't think that way. So that when we're going to approach but the other also an extra element, Luis, is that think about our reserves. Again, our organization needs to have reserves by law, depending by the states, etc. So you need to get some money that in case you go bankrupt or close, you're going to be paid people and supply. Where these reserves are invested, by the way? Question mark?
Yeah, Exxon. I don't know. I mean, for all I know.
Exactly. So are you sure that your reserves are invested in align with your mission? Are your reserves invested in something that generate income from your organization or support your fundraising? See, that's a big chunk of money that we don't think about it. We leave these things to the financial people, which are great people, but we don't think that this is another way to leverage. These things will not substitute the fundraising. So donation, philanthropy is our bread and butter. These things will help us to do faster, amplify, do better, get another source of and be in a bit more modern in the way we look at the money substantially.
How was this specific bond? How was it priced? So I guess there's more risk because it's a non-recurse type of debt. So that would make, you'd need to give it a higher percentage, you need to pay people back more, but then it's also Unicef, which makes people look good. So then that would make the percentage go down. Like, how did you decide on that?
Well, first of all, the interesting thing is you're right, is a no-recourse, non-rate bond, but the World Bank is a AAA rated, so even if the bond is not, it's substantially issued by the AAA issuer, which is important for an investor. So the price was substantially below the market because it's LIBOR plus 5 at the time. That today is quite unheard, which is really minimal, so to say. So they and on this, I also had a lot of discussion internal with the board. Oh my God, we're going to pay interest? Yes, because you reward investors that take the risk on you, right? They could lose their money, and we pay in 5 years, so their money gonna just also lose value, by the way, due to inflation. So yeah, so we bring new money to grow more. uh, what is the cost is so minimal for $50 million to generate 250 million. We want to discuss $500,000 or something like that. This is, again, it's part of the same mentality. Yeah, if you want to track capital, you need to reward people. Take the risk and you reward it, or instead you of course, the reward can be in many ways. Can be monetary, can be in terms of impact, can be in the fact that, one of the things that more and more investors do is like, okay, if you reach those targets that you say there will be more rhino born in South Africa, I will just give up on about the interest. Okay, no problem. But give me about the capital. I will just give about the interest, and you take it as a donation, provided you can prove it that in the 5 years period there are more rhino, they are extincting, they are about extinction, they are born. That's another way to look, but it's still a risk reward mentality, right? I take the risk, you reward me, or I reward you if I achieve something.
So these types of things you just mentioned, provided you can prove it, are kind of easier to do with goals that are kind of black or white, less qualitative, that you can put a number to them. I understand you're also working on, I don't know if similar, but some type of product related to catastrophes, which is also something that you can measure and you can say there's a typhoon or there isn't.
Yeah, that's another entry to the market. So the markets is this big chunk of money they are invested, and they are in various stock shares, debt, and things. And then there is a big market that's insurance and reinsurance, right? Today, we reinsures many things. It's trillions of money. Again, it's a risk reward. So our issue is that when there are small events, natural events that happen in many parts of the world pretty regularly, like typhoons, right? Typhoons happen in Bangladesh, Philippines, Madagascar. They don't even make the news. They are so irrelevant. They don't even make the news, but they have big damage on the family, on the children. So it's even difficult to raise the money for that emergency. Nobody really cares. And the other things that makes a big difference in an emergency is having the money right away. You need to get the money to respond. So what we said is say, okay, why don't we just create a parametric insurance that basically says when there is a wind speed over a certain speed that is recorded by the sensor, and they are geolocalized on a specific area, that means there is a typhoon. So that doesn't need other verification, and that is very objective. When this happens, that means there will be a big damage in the area. Therefore, Unicef can access as an insurance, the insurance pay, because that happened. Of course, to get access of that type, you need to pay a big coupon, a big premium, like any insurance, right? Because it's a high probability, high risk, right? So you pay. So we need to raise money to pay the coupon. But let's say 10 million will unlock 100 million that in the next typhoon we can, in the Philippines, Bangladesh, etc., we can use right away. So it's another way. Can the market pay for the damage, and can they pay for the and take the risk for something and share the risk? So this is another way to look at things. So using the insurance and to take part of the risk and part of the cost of the climate change, or the climate damage, and it's an interesting dynamic, because the other part of this deal will be, for every $10 that we're gonna raise for the coupon, 3 will go to the preparedness. So 7 will go to pay the premium, but 3 will go to the same country as a donation to prepare the population to the next typhoon, to pre-position stuff, so that then when the typhoon strike, we better organize. So because it's so that the insurers know that we're not only dealing with the damage, but we also try to build resilience,
minimize the damage.
Exactly.
This is so interesting. So Francesco, okay, you convinced me. I hope you convinced I'm seeing, about 11 people here with us, give or take. I'm sure we had 30, 40 people coming and going. How do we get started? So, like, something that frustrates me a whole lot is there are fantastic organizations, really brilliant, genius people, doing things like this. So, there's the people at Wikipedia doing really fancy things with online fundraising. There's, but it kind of never spreads. And then you have lots of nonprofits that just have a, horrible donor experience, and they're wondering why people aren't giving. So how do we what are the roadblocks? And maybe people who are here connected can kind of weigh in. Like, I'm sure we can use some help. Like, is Wall Street, are people in Wall Street interested? How do you connect with them? What would you see as a way forward? And we're just kind of brainstorming here.
Oh, it's a big question, Luis, and I don't know if I have an answer. I think that there are different angles. The financial sector, that is the Wall Street, but more the broader financial community, definitely is interested. They need to be more educated and more working with us. Too much people go to the BlackRock of this world, and the logic is asking for a grant, and this is not the right way. So we need to find a space in which co-create financial product, financial opportunities, in which they understand our missions, they understand our needs, and we are ready to just say, okay, this is a financial product. That means they have to return capital and or interest. How are we going to work together to do that? So this is co-create a space in which we work on products and investment. Two, we need to work with the organization itself and the boards, in the sense to just say, we cannot keep promising to eliminate poverty, dealing with climate change, hunger, and things, and be constantly not resourced to do that. We do the best we can in raising money from the philanthropy and the donation, but this is, is not enough. So, dear board, this is my fundraising. You see that is returning, whatever, we're growing 5-10%, is solid, is we're not going to ask you to invest in crypto fancy stuff. We invest in acquiring and retain individual donors that will going to give us money regularly, right? And invest in legacy that will take a little more time, but this is, this needs capital.
Fairly proven.
Yeah, this needs capital. We need, if we don't have it because we don't raise enough, let's go to market, let's go to a bank and just say, this is my fundraising. I need 10 million, I need 100, I need $1 billion. The only thing I can give you is my past data and my future projection, which are pretty fairly solid. I pretty guarantee you that this will make 3-1. So I'm not going to put anything at risk in terms of other resources, my organization, any collateral. So give or take. But if you do that, you help me to get 3 times our services for homeless. You give me 3 more times to advocate for reproductive health. You give me 3 more time resources to advocate for women. Okay, so it's you take some risk. I may not raise the money and therefore you lose it. Okay, it's a donation then, but I can give you the money back in 5 years, and this money will make 3 times, 5 times. You can do this in every single organization, even the smallest one, with a plan that is solid. I know do this investing in fancy events, in crypto, in crazy stuff. I need a proven technique, proven fundraising, right? Which is substantially acquiring and retaining individual donors. So that could be the one-off, can be regular giving, can be legacy, things that we know is pretty solid. If you do well, cost at the beginning, invest in the cost. Once you acquire and you retain well with a good experience, this is growing, and you end up with a legacy. And then some of them is a high value donors, and some of them is managed. So it's all well and try. You need capital. So instead of doing with your 2 cents, you can do with your 20 million. So that's what I think is we can do everywhere. Now, my 4th point. This is me thinking, dreaming. I think we need the bank. We need a sector bank. I don't want to. I mean, I can go to city. I can go to, and they will maybe play because of the social. But I think if the sector itself will have a financial institution that is which is made of organizations. So the organization have the stakes in it. They're owned by the organization. They can lend money, can invest money. They can, that will change the game. That will change the game because it will be capital. It will be owned by the sector, by the organization, instead of be owned by some other financial guru. And I think this is being more ambitious.
I mean, and so much of this is honestly trust and having a precedent, because I can imagine that board conversation. So I've been in a fair number of them, right? Where people immediately, shoot it down. But then, you can say, well, UNICEF did it, it wasn't so hard. Okay, then you overcome that hurdle and you go to the bank. And you go to a bank that doesn't have as much experience, and maybe they tell you you're crazy, but then
Yeah.
you can say, well, UNICEF did it. I mean, this is a real thing, it's a real product that's out there. But it's kind of, I think what you're giving people is hope that this, is not a crazy thing. You just have to be persistent and find the right partners. And maybe most people are not the right partners, and that's okay.
Yeah. So this is the one way. The other way is having this courage to just say, look, in terms of programs, right? There is, I have limits how much I can grow the service to homeless or to reproductive health, or to how much I can advocate on. And there are battles that we face in this country. They require a lot of resources. I mean, I'm sorry to be political here, but where the direction we're going, the organization needs a lot of resources to advocate, to campaign, to get more donors. So this needs resources. So we need to be more smart and just say, what can I do to attract this capital, so that maybe if I achieve what I achieve, which is less teenager that go into rehabilitation society, less homeless to provide, or less whatever, then you are paying for what we achieve, or you forget that you get the money back, or you just forget about your interest. I am now working on a big transaction for polio. Polio is nearly eliminated from the planet, apart from two countries. There are Afghanistan and Pakistan, the most difficult country in the world.
Wow.
But we can eliminate. We need $4
That's
billion.
incredible.
They need $4 billion. How long is it going to take us to ask $4 billion? So we now, with the Gates Foundation and another investment bank, we try to set up a mechanism. Just say, look, you give us $4 billion, we will eliminate polio. If we not reaching those number of indicators, the number of cases of polio, you take the risk, you take a loss. If we reach it, though, the Gates Foundation is going to pay. So it's another way to look at it. So somebody has to take a risk, somebody has to take the reward. But in this way, you got to put $4 billion to eliminate polio. Who is not going to be? Is always not going to be an exciting proposition to eliminate polio from humanity, right?
I goosebumps. I have goosebumps. But yeah, I mean, this is amazing. It feels like a way to just go about it that's much smarter and more practical. And I think people also need to understand, Francesco, that we used to live in a world that was stockholder capitalism, or that the main view of companies. So essentially, it was about just caring about the interests of one group of people, your stockholders. What is it called now? It has another name. Shareholder. I don't know, but BlackRock has another term. So essentially, that view of capitalism, of what companies are here to do, is larger now. So you have to care not only for your, people that have your stock, but for your employees, for your environment, for your communities. So that's not, that's not a crazy thought. So
no, and this is and this, Luis, is the other route that I take, is which is also in part in my book, the Uchtone feeling. So people today want to change the world, want to be passionate about the cause in different way than just donating, right? Yeah, the people donate, but they do many other things, right? They buy products that are aligned with what they believe. They invest, right? So this is a new modality, not only for the capitalists, but for the normal people. I mean,
Hmm.
I know that we don't like millennials because millennials don't have money, but millennials care well a lot about it. So if you
Hmm.
really want to be thinking about next generation is really cares about it. And that's
Yeah.
all my point. So this is not just aligned with stockholder capitalism, like bringing new money to our causes, can scale up, but it's also new way of activism. So what Peter does, and what I really like, is that Peter's very radical, right? But they really do radical stuff. But they become shareholders. So company they want to change. So when you become shareholder,
Great.
you have the right to file petition and to ask why you're still using animal in your experiment. So this is another way you want to change the world, and the bad people that do create a pollute the environment, exploit people, just become a shareholder and just moving from the inside. That's another way to look at things. We need capital to for our courses. We need capital to go faster. We need capital to scale up, but we need also influence capital, and we can do in many ways. We can create products that are more aligned. We can and we can become shareholders of company we want to change.
This is amazing. Francesco, it has been so inspiring to chat with you today. Folks that are here, I feel like this may be the beginning of something. Francesco and I have two or
I
three
hope
more
so.
calls scheduled. So, hey, if anybody has a connection or has a thought that they'd like to share, please do reach out. Heather has been posting a few really interesting thoughts. He's a fantastic member and leader of the Donor Participation Project. And on her spare times, he's a chief development officer with Norwest Cap. But let's see, Heather, thank you for your reflections. Yes, we need to advocate more for the resources that we need. I think Francesca is giving us some tools that are not just I need money, but there's a little bit of give and take there, risk, reward. So kind of other tools to have that conversation with, essentially. Um, and the concept of venture capitalism for the nonprofit sector. I'm sure, Francesco, you mentioned that very briefly when you mentioned startups.
Yeah, no, this is another thing we don't have. Exactly. So the startups in the world, if you see WeWork and Theranos, for those of you who follow that, it's just a big idea to change the world. In their mind, they were trying to change the world, and they get billions of dollars. So, but we don't have venture capital environment for nonprofit. So, as I said, to mention a name like the next charity water of this world, how they're going to fund the capital. So imagine and there are many amazing organizations that they were born with
Mhm.
incredible solution to a problem, a new technology, a new approach. Where they're going to go? They cannot go to Silicon Valley because nobody will listen to them, and they will go with the idea that they need philanthropy money.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I agree, Heather. It's a very another way to look. How many unicorns, how many startups in our sector we have, and how many we have been able to bring it to scale. We don't have that. So exactly. So I would just say evil people or in the selfish individual are managed to sell an idea to change the world. That is not true. And we really have the idea and the knowledge and the story and the capacity, we
And
know
the
how to
capacity.
sell it. Yeah, exactly. So we work was like $46 billion, and so we need part of this. We need more venture capital for nonprofit. We need more startups and more unicorn for nonprofit. But we need to change mentality. Growing with philanthropy only.
Only, exactly. Well, thank you, Francesco. We know you um, know a whole lot about every topic you've touched on today, so that I think that makes this conversation that more meaningful. Very grateful to you. I hope this starts great things, and we'll be in touch. Thanks so very much.
Definitely. Thanks everyone for listening. Happy to interact with you separately. And Luis, yeah, I hope this will gonna develop in something more substantial for the sector.
Knock on wood.
Because it's about time that I think it's about, I don't remember, like 20 years from Dan Pallotta It's not like it was
Isn't
like
that
yesterday.
crazy? Isn't
Yeah,
that crazy?
yeah, exactly.
It's nuts.
Right. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for the time. Thanks everyone for follow.
Thank you. May 31. Remember this date. It's the beginning of something. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good